Hi everyone, so a little video that's actually more geared towards paper 2, the practical paper. Um, if you're not doing a practical paper for your course, it's still very relevant, the things that we have to cover. In fact, this is actually questions which are all about just identifying different parts of code really. So I'm just going to work through these typical questions. Now this is a very long one. I've actually combined two questions like this, so that the likelihood is it will be very similar to what you get asked, albeit it will be in two parts. So the first one, the name given to a data structure in the code, that relies on you knowing that a data structure is an array, a list of different variables, and the only one that's in this code is locations. And the kind of key thing to look for is these square brackets. So for our first question, locations is the only data structure that's in that. The next one, keywords we're looking at here, is local variables. Now, local variables exist only, or their scope rather, is only within the sub-procedure that they are created within. So you can see here that even though these are input parameters to this, and down here it's referred to as money and num days, these are global variables because they could be accessed in any sub-procedure other than the one that they are created in. However, if you create and run this code and try and print out days anywhere else in this program, you will see that it doesn't work. So let's actually just give that a try. So let's print out days, and we'll run it just quickly, and we'll see that if I run through the next part, I actually have to get it to end, sorry, you can see that it crashes because days is not defined, even though if we look in the program it clearly is. But if I move that part inside this sub-procedure, hopefully that works. It looks as if there might be an indentation problem. Let's see what's happened there. What's gone wrong here? Something not right. I've managed to change something here that I didn't want to. Let me figure this out. Anyway, take my words for it. It does work if you put it in here, if you can actually get your code to function properly. So let me take that back out of there and get it back to normal. And let me see if it lets me do it properly at the bottom. Nope, something wrong with my indentation. I'm just going to leave that. But the local variable in the code, the only two that you could have are cache and days, because they're the only variables that exist solely within a sub-procedure. And in this case, this is a procedure rather than a function, as mine wrongly says here, because a function must have a return value. A name given to a global variable. Global variables only exist, or sorry, not only exist, they exist with a scope that they can be used in any part of the program. So the way to look for them is that they will not be inside the start and ends of procedures or functions. So anything basically that's out with it. So we've got money and num days are your options for that. Identify the line numbers which show selection. Now, I believe there's a bunch here that you could put in. Selection is where your code chooses to go either down one path or on another path, and that's achieved by using if-else blocks. So identifying line numbers in this scenario, in your practical exam, if you're using Python, you can see it down here, or if the code's printed out, it should have it at the side written in pseudocode. So I probably shouldn't have edited this code at all, which was stupid in my behalf, but I believe it's fixed back to normal. And certainly you can see that the ifs start on this line. So it starts from line 9 down to about line 18. So often you'll be fine just writing the first line. However, I like it when we do the exam to write down the line it begins and ends on, just so that you're fully demonstrating that you understand it. The line numbers which show repetition are any loops. So again, I'm going to put my cursor to the start of the while loop line there that you can just see, and that's on line 21, and I mean it would end here on line 27. So for that one, 21 to 27 is our conditional loop that repeats, and it's conditional because it's a while rather than a fixed for loop. One technique to make our code more readable, well, I don't have much of it, but internal commentary will make my code easier to understand for other programmers, which is answer the next one. Easier for other programmers to type. Programmers to understand. And other reasons for that is it makes it easier for testing as well, because people are updating as well. If people are not familiar with your code, then they can read it and understand it. Other ones are indentation, because it's easier to see where loops begin and end, and also sensible variable names. Identify the line number showing you use a defined function. Now I will have to fix this because that's actually wrong, as I pointed out earlier. The function must have a return value, and in this case it doesn't. But the line numbers, again, if you look it up, it will be line 7 to line 19, and that would be the line numbers to show the user-defined procedure. If it had a return value for these, which I guess it possibly could, then that would be the answer for that one. Built-in subprogram in the code. So if we look in here, actually I don't think there's any in this particular one. There we go. Not in the function anyway. Here's a built-in subprogram in the code, and it is round, and that is a predefined function. And the reason that we use them is they speed up development time, because they're already written and tested by other users, and we can really just plug them in to our program and they will work. All the documentation's already written for them, they've already been thoroughly tested, so there's no need for us to spend time developing and testing and documenting on them, so it really speeds up the time it takes to develop our program. One of the input parameters is either cache or days, so these are our input parameters to our procedure or function, depending on whether it has a return value or not, so either one of those would get you the mark. I described one benefit of using subprograms. It cuts down on the amount of code that you have to write, so it cuts down on the amount of code that must be written / tested, and the code can be reused again and again. This speeds up development time for creating software. So if you can cut down the amount of code you have to create by decomposing your problems really well and reusing predefined functions, or making your own functions and subprograms that you can call repeatedly. Maybe that's another one to note. These can be called repeatedly, which obviously speeds up again the time it takes to develop your program. So they're obviously beneficial because we save a lot of time in development. Now these next ones will obviously be quite tricky. If you're doing a practical exam and it's asking you for the outputs for these, you can actually run the program. What's more likely in the practical one is that you have to trace it to show the output that you would get for it. And again, you can run it and check what you get with each of those ones. So there are ways in a practical exam, if you use your skills as a coder, to get it. Now these are the typical ones that you would also get asked in just the paper 2 non-practical exam, and it will obviously involve you piecing through it. So if you've got money is equal to 999, that's obviously false for cash here, but it's true here, and the days are greater than or equal to 10, which means it prints out locations 1, and hopefully we're aware that Australia's at position 0, so that would give us the output of Bali. when the money is 300, 300 is not bigger than 300. So that would actually be false, and 7 is not bigger than 7. So we'd end up with 3. So for that one, we'd actually end up with no matches whatsoever. When the money is equal to 500, this is true, but the days are 9, which is not greater than or equal to 10. So it triggers the else. The cash is obviously bigger than 300. The days is bigger than 7, so we get locations 2, which would give us Vietnam. For the next one, you have to suggest inputs that would trigger each of those outputs. So for Australia, just pick numbers that match both of these. Now these ones are slightly trickier. The smallest values for Australia to be triggered, so that's obviously 0, so we want to have the lowest values. That would obviously be 1014 for the 2 values to be the lowest to trigger that one out. The largest value that would print out Bali has actually been given away in the top part of the question. It's actually 999 and 13 days, because anything higher on the next one, arguably there's actually a confusion there, because you could put a really high number. In fact, that's a dumb question, because you could have 999 and 14, or as long as this number is lower than 14 and the other one's bigger, then that could be higher. So hopefully when we go over this in class, people notice that. And then the smallest value for Vietnam, which is locations 2, the smallest would be greater than 300, so we probably need 299 and 6. No, sorry, bigger, wrong way around. 301 and 8 would be the smallest value. Now, what would be great is if you're actually following through this lesson and have written the code, you can tell me if I'm incorrect, which will show you really understand it. So good luck with these. Definitely worth taking your time over, especially at the end of the exam and when you've finished everything else and you've got time to check it carefully. Especially if you're doing the practical exam, you can obviously run the code to make sure that you get it correct. So tell me in the comments if I've made any errors with this one.